Hey San Diego, Tom Jones here, board president of San Diego SPJ chapter. Thank you for watching this video and us announcing and celebrating our special and top award winners, as well as our scholarship recipients, and of course our Journalist of the Year, Trageser of KPBS. I think it's safe to say that 2020 has exhausted all of us, that we're ready for the new year to start. But I just wanted to say thank you to all of the journalists working in San Diego. You all play a major role in our community's recovery. So when you're feeling the anxiety of that deadline working from home or someone online calling you fake news, just remember that your work matters. Okay, let's celebrate our awards this year. Thank you for supporting San Diego's SPJ chapter, and hopefully we'll see you next year in person.
The 2020 Sol Price Award for Responsible Journalism goes to Jeff McDonald, Kelly Davis, and Lauren Schroeder with the San Diego Union Tribune for their series Dying Behind Bars. The judges said Dying Behind Bars represents the best piece of responsible journalism that utilizes both video and print media to cover deaths of untreated mentally ill inmates. The winner for this year's Diversity Prize goes to SPJ's Journalist of the Year, Trageser with KPBS, for her piece Dr. J's, How a Gang Shooting Changed Southeast San Diego. The judges said Trageser's exceptional coverage of this gang shooting that had a profound impact on one community epitomizes the level of excellence needed to win the Diversity Award.
This year's winner for the Herbert Lockwood Woody Award for humor writing goes to Irv Erdos with the San Diego Union Tribune. The judges said the piece, titled Enjoying All the Amenities San Diego Has to Offer, was a true delight to read, including a twist at the end that is absolutely spectacular.
The 2020 winner of the Neil Morgan Community Impact Award goes to Will Huntsberry with Voice of San Diego for his piece Exposure of Doc Who Helped Families Avoid Vaccination Led to New State Law. The judges said Huntsberry receives the award for his story leading to new legislation surrounding vaccination exemptions and was a great service to our community.
The 2020 First Amendment Award goes to Tom Jones, Maury Payton, Bill Feather, Paul Kruger, and Jay Yu with NBC7 for their piece, Border Agents Created Secret Database of Journalists, Attorneys, and Immigration Aid Workers. The judges said this piece is journalism of the most profound importance, triggering an immediate reaction in the halls of power in Washington.
The winner of the 2020 Gloria Penner Award for Political Affairs Reporting goes to Mary Plummer with iNewsSource for the story San Diego Voters Promised Billions in Infrastructure Fixes, but Money Running Dry. The judges said Plummer's thorough investigation uncovered shortcomings of the Rebuild San Diego measure.
Hi, I'm Andrew Bowen, KPBS Metro reporter and Vice President of the San Diego Pro Chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists, and I'm honored to introduce our 2020 SPJ San Diego Journalist of the Year, Trageser. 2020 has been a roller coaster for all of us, especially journalists, and when looking back to her body of work in 2019, you have to wonder if Claire knew something that others didn't. In February of last year, she unveiled a 6-part podcast series called Dr. J's about how a tragic gang shooting in Southeast San Diego led to a surge in police presence that many in that community felt made their lives less safe. This is exactly the discourse we've been watching play out across the country after the death of George Floyd. Claire's reporting on policing and racial injustice led the way for many other journalists in San Diego. She did extensive reporting on police disciplinary records, newly accessible to the public thanks to SB 1421. And she did a 2-part series on the felony murder rule, which allows someone to be charged with murder even if they never killed anyone. These are not easy stories to report. They involve a lot of trust building, a lot of public records requests, a lot of reading through documents. Her dedication to journalism and journalists is an inspiration for me and all of us. When I first got to KPBS, I was actually assigned to shadow Claire as she reported one of her features. It was about a new Buddhist fraternity and sorority at SDSU. And this is another example of a quintessential Claire Trageser story. She has a knack for finding stories in places where no one else is looking. Like her feature on why San Diego has so many broken trash bins, or where you can get a ticket for not cramping the wheels of your car in the right direction. Simply put, Claire is an ace reporter who knows her craft, and she doesn't keep that knowledge to herself. Not only did I get to shadow Claire on that story 5 years ago and learn about KPBS's own style of storytelling, I also have, or had, the immense privilege of sitting next to her in the office. She's helped me figure out angles of stories that I've been stuck on, strategize about how and when to approach a difficult source. She's listened to me vent my frustrations about anything. She's helped me get to know my beat when I was coming in knowing next to nothing about San Diego. Claire, you absolutely earned this honor, and it's really a privilege to be your colleague and to present you with this award. Congratulations, Claire.
Hi, everyone. I never thought I'd miss the usual SPJ banquet $9 warm beers at Kona Kai, but clearly there have been a lot of things about 2020 that I didn't anticipate. I've been on the SPJ board and I know how challenging it is to pick a Journalist of the Year. I can imagine that was especially the case this year. We're in the midst of several career-defining stories all at the same time, and journalists across San Diego have not just risen to the occasion, but clawed and scrambled their way even higher. Journalists like Lindsay Winkley, Carlos Cacchetto, and Taryn Mento live tweeted the county press conference every day and still managed to enterprise other scoops at the same time. Paul Sisson has tugged and pulled out many pieces of the coronavirus story and packed them with incredibly well-reported details. I still think about one of his stories from several months ago about the dire scene in South Bay hospitals. Reporters like Omari Fleming, Max Rivlin-Nadler, David Hernandez, and Alex Riggins have been on the ground covering the protests across San Diego County, sometimes putting their own health and safety at risk. Jesse Marks has relentlessly pursued the story of surveillance in San Diego, breaking stories about how streetlight cameras are being used by police. Kelly Davis, Jeff McDonald, and Lisa Halverstadt have done great reporting, holding law enforcement agencies accountable. And then there are all the producers, editors, and photographers who may not get bylines, but who are essential in making great stories. My work really would not happen without Nick McVicker and Andy Ducleth, Kinsey Moreland and Emily Jankowski, Megan Burke and Marissa Cabrera, Chris Underwood, Susanna Tsutsumi and Michael Wayne, and Suzanne Marmion, and especially David Washburn. We all have produced a lot of work this year that we should be incredibly proud of. And we are all working under extreme pressure, working remotely, threat of layoffs, furloughs, kids at home, worries about ourselves or our family getting sick, really the total upheaval of life around us. So I can imagine it was really difficult to choose a journalist to honor this year. I think the fact that SPJ chose me shows that the board wants to recognize the importance of covering people of color in San Diego, people from parts of the city and county that historically haven't gotten much attention unless the stories were about gang warfare. I think the board wants to recognize the importance of covering underserved communities like Southeast San Diego, covering issues of policing and criminal justice, covering the systemic racism in our region, and not just in a drop-in fashion because suddenly everyone is paying attention to racism and policing. I've always tried to tell in-depth stories that require gaining trust, spending time, and talking to as many people as I possibly can. And so really, any recognition I'm receiving for my work should go to the people who agreed to talk with me. People like Tanya and Janice Waits and Ida Campbell, who are willing to relive trauma to tell their stories to me. Or people like Aaron Harvey, Wilnisha Sutton, Queese Kalyan, and Khaled Alexander, who trusted me to write about them accurately, even though they didn't know me and didn't have the most favorable impression of the media. Or people like Barry Pollard, Layla Aziz, and Armand King, who always answer my calls and explain things to me, even though they have far better things to do. I feel very privileged that all of these people have trusted me to tell their stories, even though I'm a white woman who can never fully and personally know or understand their experiences. But I'm also pretty sure that there are aspects of this reporting that I, as a white woman, miss. So I want to stress the importance of newsrooms across the region investing in hiring, promoting, and giving opportunities to journalists of color. That hasn't happened enough so far. At 4 local newsrooms, including KPBS, with a combined staff of 200 people, there are 9 Black journalists and 23 Latinx journalists. I think we're now hopefully finally waking up to the fact that newsroom diversity isn't just about looking good on staff pages. It is really, truly essential to doing our job. We can't fairly, accurately, or completely cover our region without journalists and editors who actually represent all the people who live here. I also want us to take those questions we ask elected officials and government agencies about systemic racism and turn them inward to our own newsrooms. What are we doing to address inequality? What barriers have we set up that prevent people of color from getting ahead? Previous Journalists of the Year have been able to point to concrete change that came about because of their reporting. Duncan Hunter Jr. is headed to jail, eventually. There's a new director at Sandag who's trying to take the agency in an entirely new direction. For my reporting, it would be harder to point to big changes. Police disproportionately shooting people of color, or COVID disproportionately slamming the Latino population in South Bay, or the simultaneous neglect and over-policing of Southeast San Diego likely won't be corrected in a year. But there are glimmers of progress happening now. There are finally laws in California that are beginning to nudge loose some transparency in law enforcement. Elected officials are at least talking about and making moves toward police reform and addressing racial inequity. And stories of racism are making their way to the top of our consciousness. So I would ask all of us, as journalists working in San Diego, to commit to that progress by acknowledging the systemic racism in our country, in our region, and addressing that inequality as a priority in all the reporting we do. So we actually have a chance to make that concrete change, that impact that we as journalists love to see. Because covering these issues should not just be happening now because they're on trend. These are stories I believe all of us have a deep responsibility to tell. So I wanted to say again, thank you to the SPJ board for this incredible honor. And to all of you journalists, please stay safe and keep doing the work that you're doing. Keep pushing, because I think that people need our information now more than ever. Thank you.
The 2020 Excellence in Journalism Prize goes to Brad Racino and Jill Castellano with iNewsSource for their reporting on risky research, which details the shortcomings in the system designed to protect participants of research studies in the U.S. and across the world.
And the 2020 Distinguished Coverage Award goes to KPBS's Claire Trageser, Eric Anderson, Steve Walsh, Matt Hoffman, and David Washburn for their reporting San Diego's climate crisis. The judges said this reporting was a comprehensive and powerful multimedia series done right.
Congratulations to our 2020 College Scholarship winners: Jack Trent Dorfman from UC San Diego, Victoria Holmes from the University of San Diego, Lance Nelson from Mesa College and now Columbia University, Bella Ross from San Diego State University, Amber Salas from San Diego State University, and the recipient of our Agnes Diggs Scholarship, which is given in honor of Agnes Diggs, award-winning San Diego journalist, Katie Stiegel from Southwestern College and now San Diego State University.